The day it happened, the gym smelled like rubber mats and cheap coffee, and nobody was paying attention to the man pushing the mop. His name was Conrad Webb, 61 years old, gray at the temples, hands rough from decades of work, wearing the same faded navy coveralls he wore every Tuesday and Friday. He moved the mop in slow, even strokes along the edge of the sparring floor, careful to stay out of the way. That was something people noticed about Conrad. He was always careful to stay out of the way. Pinnacle MMA and Fitness sat in a strip mall off Route 9 in Clarksburg, Maryland, wedged between a nail salon and a cell phone repair shop. It wasn't glamorous. The ceiling tiles had water stains. The trophy case by the front desk had a crack in the glass that nobody had ever bothered to fix. But the gym had a reputation, or at least it used to. These days it was mostly known for the young man who trained there. His name was Dominic Hale, 24 years old. 6'1", a regional welterweight champion with a belt he'd won 3 months ago in Atlantic City and hadn't taken off since. He wore it over his shoulder. When he walked in that morning, the gold plates catching the fluorescent light, and every head in the room turned. That was exactly the way Dominic liked it. He dropped his bag on the bench closest to the main ring, stretched his neck left then right, and took a slow look around the gym the way a man does when he believes everything in his field of vision belongs to him. His eyes landed on Conrad. "Yo," Dominic said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Floor guy, you missed a spot." He pointed to a patch of mat near the center of the room. There was no spot. Anyone could see that. A few of the younger fighters glanced at each other but said nothing. Conrad stopped mopping. He looked at the area Dominic was pointing to, then back at Dominic. "I'll get to it," he said. "You'll get to it," Dominic repeated, smiling. Not a kind smile. The kind a person uses when they want you to know they find you amusing in the way a child finds an insect amusing, briefly and without much feeling. He turned to his training partner, a kid named Bryce who followed him everywhere, and said, loud enough for the whole room, "I love this place, man. Real character." Bryce laughed. A few others laughed too, the nervous kind of laughter that happens when someone with power sets a tone. Conrad went back to mopping. He didn't look up, didn't respond. He just kept moving the mop in those same slow, even strokes, and the expression on his face didn't change at all. That stillness bothered Dominic more than he would have admitted. He was used to reactions. He was used to people flinching or apologizing or trying to make him laugh so he'd ease up. Conrad gave him nothing, just the mop, just the floor. "Hey," Dominic called again. He walked toward him now, belt still over his shoulder, chin up. "I'm talking to you, old man." Conrad stopped a second time. He looked at Dominic with the kind of patience that is hard to describe, not submission, not aggression, just a deep, unhurried calm, the way still water looks before you realize how far down it goes. "I heard you," Conrad said. "Then look at me when I talk to you." A pause, slow, thick, uncomfortable. Conrad turned to face him fully. He stood straight, not stiff, not rigid, just composed. He was a few inches shorter than Dominic. The coveralls had his name stitched above the pocket in pale yellow thread. Conrad. He held the mop handle loosely in his left hand, relaxed. "I'm looking," he said. Dominic's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected that either. He'd expected shrinking. He'd expected the small, apologetic backward step. He reached out and with one hand pushed Conrad's shoulder, not hard enough to knock him down, not soft enough to be an accident. A shove. Deliberate. Testing. "You know what I think?" Dominic said. "I think you need to learn to work faster. We got people trying to train in here." Conrad didn't move when the push landed. He absorbed it the way a wall absorbs a knock. His feet didn't shift. His hand didn't tighten on the mop. He just looked at Dominic Hale with those quiet, unreadable eyes and said nothing. "Yeah," Dominic said, taking the silence for victory. He turned back to Bryce. Should have sent him home already. Too slow. He walked toward the bag rack. The room had gone quiet in that specific way. Rooms go quiet when something has happened that nobody quite knows how to name. A few of the regulars exchanged looks. One of them, an older fighter named George, who'd been training at Pinnacle for 11 years, stared at the floor and said nothing. He knew better. He knew things about Conrad that Dominic Hale had never bothered to find out. It was Bryce who decided to push it further. "Hey, old timer," he called out, laughing at his own joke before he'd even made one. "You ever think about taking a class? Maybe you could last 30 seconds with Dom." More laughter. Easier now that it had permission. Conrad set the mop against the wall. He walked to the water fountain, took a slow drink, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Then he turned and looked at Dominic, not at Bryce, at Dominic, like Bryce wasn't worth the full address. "You want to spar?" Conrad asked. The laughter stopped. Dominic turned around slowly. He looked at Conrad for a long moment, reading the question, deciding if he'd heard it right. Then a grin spread across his face. Wide and easy. The grin of a man who cannot believe his luck. "You serious?" "I don't joke about the mat," Conrad said. Dominic looked around the room, arms open, sharing the moment. "Can you believe this? Old man wants to get on the mat." He set the belt down on the bench, cracked his knuckles. "All right. Yeah, let's go, Pops. I'll take it easy on you." "Don't," Conrad said. He walked to the equipment room without another word. He came back 2 minutes later wearing gloves that were old, cracked at the knuckles, the red worn to a faded rust, and a pair of shorts that had seen better decades. He rolled his neck twice, loose and unhurried, and stepped onto the mat like a man who had done it 10,000 times, because he had. What happened next is hard to put into language that does it justice. Dominic came at him with the confidence of a regional champion, which is real confidence, earned, tested, legitimate. His footwork was clean, his jab was sharp. He moved the way a 24-year-old who has put in serious time moves, with speed and a kind of fearlessness that comes from not yet having learned what there is to be afraid of. And Conrad Webb made him look like he was standing still. Not through power, though Conrad was not a small man and the strength in his frame was not the soft kind. Not through youth. He was 37 years older than Dominic, and he knew it. He did it through something harder to train than speed or strength. He did it through understanding. Every time Dominic threw, Conrad was already somewhere else. Every time Dominic changed angles, Conrad had already adjusted. He moved like he was reading a book he'd read before, turning the pages just ahead of the words. 3 minutes in, Dominic threw a right hand that he'd landed on better fighters than Conrad Webb. It hit air, and in the moment that his weight shifted forward and his balance wavered, just slightly, barely visible to anyone who didn't know what to look for, Conrad's hand was at his collar, his hip was already turning, and Dominic Hale, regional welterweight champion, was airborne. He hit the mat flat on his back. The sound of it echoed off the water-stained ceiling tiles. Nobody laughed. Dominic lay there for a second, blinking at the fluorescent lights. Then he rolled up onto his elbow. His chest was heaving. His face had the expression of a man encountering something that doesn't fit the model of the world he's been carrying around in his head. He got up. He went again. Same result. Different technique. Same ending. The third time, Conrad put him down with a single arm drag that transitioned so smoothly into a rear body lock that even George, who had been training for 11 years and had seen things, took a step forward to watch. He held Dominic there for a long moment, controlled, patient, and then let him go and step back without a word. Dominic sat on the mat. He was breathing hard. His hands were on his knees. His eyes were fixed on the floor. The gym was absolutely silent. Conrad stood at the edge of the mat. He wasn't breathing hard. His expression hadn't changed. He pulled off one glove, then the other, and held them in his hand and waited. "Who are you?" Dominic asked. His voice was quiet now. The performance was gone. Conrad didn't answer right away. He walked to the bench along the wall, the one closest to the trophy case with the cracked glass, and he sat down. He looked at the case for a moment, and then he looked at Dominic. "You've been training here, what, 2 years?" Conrad said. 3, Dominic said. "You ever look at that wall?" Conrad nodded toward the far end of the gym, past the heavy bags, where a row of framed photographs hung in a line. They were faded from the light, a little dusty, easy to walk past without seeing. Most of the newer members had never given them a second glance. Dominic stood up slowly. He walked toward the wall the way a person walks toward something they're not sure they want to see. He stopped in front of the third photograph from the left. A large frame, dark wood, the image slightly yellowed at the edges. 3 fighters standing in a row, each one holding a championship belt. And standing behind them, hands on the shoulders of the 2 on either side. A man in a white collared shirt, calm, unhurried, unmistakable. Dominic stared at it for a long moment. "That's you," he said. "That's me," Conrad said. The photograph was from 2009. The 3 men in front had gone on to hold titles at the national and international level. The man behind them, the one who had mapped their technique, repaired their habits, rebuilt their confidence when it collapsed in training camps and dark weeks before big fights. That man had left competition coaching 11 years ago, after his daughter got sick and the medical bills got complicated and life required different things from him than it had before. He'd taken the maintenance job at Pinnacle 4 years ago. The owner, a man named Bill Fenton, who had known Conrad for 2 decades, had offered it to him quietly, no announcement. Bill hadn't said a word to the members about who was mopping their floors. He figured people ought to earn the knowledge. Apparently, not everyone had earned it yet. Conrad set his gloves on the bench beside him. He looked at Dominic, really looked at him. The way he used to look at fighters he was evaluating for the first time. And what he saw wasn't a bad person. He saw a young man who had been handed victories before he'd been handed humility, and who didn't yet understand that one without the other is a trap. He'd seen it before. He'd fixed it before, too, when the person was willing. "You have real talent," Conrad said. It was not a compliment offered to soften a blow. It was a fact, stated plainly. Dominic looked at him. "Yeah? Your jab setup is clean. Your footwork going left is better than right. You favor it when you're tired, which is a tell, and you telegraph the right hand with your shoulder about a quarter second before you throw it." He paused. "You didn't know any of that?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. "No," he said. "I didn't." Conrad nodded. "That's not your fault. That's a coaching problem." He stood up, tucked the old gloves under his arm, and picked up the mop from where he'd left it against the wall. "You shoved me," he said, not harshly, not with anger, just noting it, the way you note a fact. Dominic's jaw moved. Whatever came easily to him, the deflection, the excuse, the quick repositioning of blame, none of it came. He stood in front of that photograph of 3 champions and a man in a white shirt, and he felt the particular shame that has no defense because it is entirely accurate. "I did," he said. "I'm sorry." Conrad looked at him. He let the apology land and stay, didn't rush past it or dismiss it. After a moment, he said, "Thursday morning, 6 a.m. I'm usually here before Bill unlocks the doors." Dominic blinked. "You're offering to train me." "I'm offering to fix what's broken," Conrad said. "Whether you want to be trained is up to you." He picked up the mop. He walked to the corner of the room where the floor met the wall, and he began, once again in those slow, even strokes, to clean the space where other people worked. Bryce was still standing near the bag rack. He hadn't said a word in 20 minutes. He was looking at the photograph on the wall, then at Conrad, then at the photograph again, doing the quiet math of a person recalibrating everything they thought they knew about a room they'd been inside for months. Some people in that gym had looked at Conrad Webb every Tuesday and Friday for 4 years and seen a man they didn't need to pay attention to. They had seen the coveralls and the mop and the gray at his temples, and they had decided efficiently and without much thought what he was and what he was worth. They had been looking, they had not been seeing. That is a distinction that matters more than most people realize until it is too late, and the gap between who they assumed someone was and who that person actually is opens up beneath them, without warning, the way a floor gives way. I've been thinking about Conrad Webb for a while now, about the way he just kept mopping, even after the shove, about those old gloves with the red worn to rust, about the way he said, "I don't joke about the mat," quietly, without drama, because the quiet ones rarely need drama to make a point. There's something this story keeps asking me that I can't quite shake. How many Conrads have you walked past? Not in a gym, maybe in a hallway, maybe behind a counter, a wheel, a desk, maybe in a room where they were doing a job that made it easy not to look twice. How many times did you make the same calculation that Dominic Hale made, fast, automatic, confident, and come out wrong on the other side of it? I'm not asking to make you feel bad. I'm asking because I think most of us have done it, and most of us never found out. We never got the photograph on the wall. We just moved on, certain in the story we'd told ourselves, never knowing what we'd missed. Conrad never told anyone to see him differently. He never explained himself, never defended himself, never adjusted his behavior to fit someone else's expectations. He just kept doing the work, the quiet, unglamorous, overlooked work, and let the truth sit there, patient as still water, waiting for whoever was finally ready to look down. Dominic Hale showed up Thursday at 5:47 a.m. The gym was dark. Conrad was already there. He unlocked the door himself. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was the session. 3 hours, no belt, no audience, nothing performed. Just a man who had trained champions, and a young one who was, for the first time, genuinely ready to learn.